Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to a new video. So this is a discussion that I have honestly been wanting to do for the past almost 2 years now. This is something that people ask me very often because of a decision that I chose to do on my car in terms of modifications. You know, this topic has been beaten to death, obviously. You know, which one is better? Go with this, go with that. But I just wanted to offer my experience because I did go with equal length headers and I have been on unequal length as well. So I wanted to give you my experience, what I think personally is best. And also I want to go over the pros and cons of unequal length as well as equal length, just so everybody is in understanding as to which one may be best for you. Obviously, it's entirely up to your decision and what you would like to do with your car. But I figured this would help some people out since I do get this question fairly often and I have some experience with both type of headers. So let's get into it. So the way that I wanted to start this video off is go over my experience, what I'm running on the car currently and why I chose what I chose. So obviously I got the car completely stock. I bought it brand new from the dealer. It came with the stock unequal length headers. I've always loved the Rumble. I had a 2013 WRX as well, had the EJ motor in it. Ran the Rumble for my entire ownership. I ran the stock headers and I absolutely love the sound. It's very iconic. You know, you can hear a Subaru off in the distance and you know immediately that that's a boxer motor coming from a WRX or STI, and it's just such an iconic sound. But in my 2017 STI, my goal was to go for reliability. I wanted a little bit more power. I wanted something that was going to breathe a little bit easier, work a little bit less, but still produce a good amount of gains. And the best way to do that in an EJ motor is to free up the flow. So what I decided to do in my power upgrade was equal length headers. I went with some Killer Bee Holy headers, the equal length headers. They're coated in Swain Tech as well to help with heat dissipation and everything. Obviously, it drastically changed the sound, but it also freed up a lot of power. When I did the headers, I also did a bunch of other stuff as well, fueling and all that. Now, my main goal when I wanted to upgrade the power was reliability. And I know running unequal length has its cons, which we'll go over in a little bit. But I wanted something that was super reliable, to kind of take out as much heat as possible. I didn't really care about the sound, even though I still like the equal length sound. So I decided to go with equal length headers. And the power that I ended up was around 342 horsepower, I believe, and around 350 foot-pounds of torque. And I owe that a lot to the equal length headers. If I stuck with the stock unequal length headers, my power levels were probably been around 320-ish or so, 330. So the equal length was a big reason as to why I was able to get the power that I got when I was stage 3. And I'm really happy I went with it. So I've been running the Killer Bee equal length header setup for almost 2 years now. I ran multiple different types of exhausts. You guys saw my whole entire exhaust escapade, just trying to find the right sound. And I absolutely love it. Do I miss the Subaru Rumble? A little bit, but overall, I prefer the power band as well as the reliability that the equal length headers provide. So now let's get into the pros and cons of unequal length and equal length. Let's start off with unequal length since that seems to be the most popular. Everybody loves the Subaru Rumble. The pros that I have come up with are obviously the sound. The Subaru Rumble is super iconic. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, it's a sound that pretty much everybody knows. If you hear that specific boxer rumble off in the distance, you know exactly what kind of car it is. In rallying and everything, coming through the forest, that Subaru Rumble is so iconic. It is such a fantastic sounding motor that honestly, I don't think any other car sounds like. And it's very easy to get these cars to sound good with pretty much any type of exhaust. Case in point, I ran my Delta Motorworks catback exhaust on the car when I had the stock unequal length headers. I ran them for I think 3 or 4 years, and I just didn't have any motivation or want to try anything else because it just sounded so good. It's really simple. On my 2013 WRX, I ran a couple different exhausts, but that was just to kind of change it up and see what it would do. I ran 2 different type of nameless exhaust as well as the Greddy exhaust as well, which was very quiet. But overall, everything sounded really great and you don't need much to get these EJs to sound very good on unequal length headers. Now, the second pro of unequal length headers is actually the turbo response. Now, most people would think that equal length headers provide more power, which we'll go into in a little bit, but the good thing about unequal length headers is that you'll get more response down low. And the main reason for that is because there's less piping. Air does not have to travel as far to the turbo, thus you get some lower end RPM spool in the turbo, much easier than equal length. So some people that do go to equal length are scratching their heads a little bit saying, I thought I was gonna get more power. We'll go into that in a little bit, but typically on unequal length setups, you get a little bit better turbo response on the low end. This last and final pro only pertains to certain people that are basically track rats and that are very, very focused on weight, but typically unequal length headers weigh less, so you're not going to be carrying as much weight. So I know that doesn't really pertain to much people, but it does to certain people that do race their STIs or WRXs on track or at the drag strip or what have you, and they want the car as light as possible. So now let's get into the cons of unequal length headers. First con that I can think of is obviously heat. We all know that the EJ motor runs very, very hot, and it is prone to failing due to excessive heat. Usually cylinder 4 is what goes first because actually that is where most of the heat is focused on the unequal length headers. If you look at the stock unequal length headers or any aftermarket ones for that matter, usually most of the piping is in one section, usually by cylinder 4, and that is where most of the heat gets distributed and is right by the block where cylinder 4 is, causing excess heat, and that is usually why you see cylinder 4 going bad in most EJ motors. Second con that I can think of for unequal length headers is simply they're inefficient. Yes, you do get some quicker spool times in the lower end RPM, but if you want a little bit more power and you want something in the mid to upper range kind of boost, you're not going to see it in unequal length. It's going to really struggle in the upper RPM range just because there's not as much flow. It's going to cause more heat, thus you're going to get less power. Are there Subaru STIs and WRXs that run some serious power with unequal length headers? Yes, there absolutely is, but it's going to have to work way more than somebody that is running equal length. So now that we went over unequal length headers, let's start getting into equal length. So real quick as to what equal length headers are, they're basically equal length pipes going to one collector, and that's pretty much it. It's a very simple concept that not only just Subarus use, it kind of goes across all different types of brands of cars and different aftermarket companies as well. So it is a pretty common aftermarket upgrade to get more power. So now let's go over the pros and cons of equal length headers. The first pro of running equal length headers is simply just freer flow. One of the first things that I noticed after I put on the Kill to Be equal length headers is simply just how much better the car overall felt. The engine felt like it was breathing easier. It felt like it just opened up a whole other door. It just felt so much smoother. It felt much happier. And obviously overall, it just stayed so much cooler. The second pro to running equal length headers is less heat. It's going to dissipate heat much better. It's going to distribute all of that heat more evenly as opposed to one area. And less heat in engines is always going to create more power. The cooler that you can make the engine, the better power and results you're going to get. Another pro, and a big one that why many people run them, is you're just going to get more power. You're going to get way more mid and upper range power, and that is where the unequal length kind of fall on its face. That is where you see the dynagraphs kind of dip. But with equal length, you're going to see the power just keep on going and going and going. So if you're really looking for good, reliable, decent power in an EJ motor, putting equal length headers will result in some serious gains, more than you would actually even think. I know most people just want to stay with unequal length simply because of the sound, but I'm telling you, if you go to equal length, the loss of sound will completely outrule the gains that you're going to get. It's pretty incredible what equal length headers will do for this car and this motor. It really opens it up, and honestly, it makes the car feel like it should have from the factory. And lastly, as I kind of mentioned, it's kind of tying into the others, you're just going to get some easier power. You're not going to have to work the engine and the components as hard to be able to get the power that you want. Obviously, there's going to be some limits with the other components that you're running, but if I was running the exact same setup as I am right now, but I was on unequal length headers, I'd probably be down 30 to 40 horsepower just because of the headers alone. Honestly, really helps that much. So now that we dipped into the pros of equal length headers, let's get into the cons. Obviously, I already talked about it, but the sound. You're going to lose the iconic EJ rumble. Don't get me wrong, in the lower RPM range and when it's just idling, there is still somewhat of a rumble. I do have quite a few sound clips right here. Honestly, don't lose the rumble completely. The only time that you're really going to notice the equal length sound is when you're on the car, wide open throttle, in the higher RPM range. That is when it's really going to start to really shine and show its true sound. Personally, I think it sounds fantastic paired with the external wastegate. It's just intoxicating. And I guarantee you, anybody that rides in a properly built STI or WX or EJ motor with equal length headers on a proper setup with some decent power, you are going to be smiling ear to ear and you're not going to even be thinking about the sound. Another con to running equal length headers is the cost. More so than not, equal length headers are more expensive than unequal length. There's not many unequal length options on the market right now. There's only a couple. But personally for me, my Killer Bee equal length headers coated in Swing Tech were like $1,800, so pretty darn expensive. The Swing Tech coating alone is pretty pricey. You can get just Killer Bee equal length headers without the coating for around $1,200 or $1,300 or so. I'm not saying it's cheap, but the difference between the coating, that's up to you. Personally, I wanted as much temperature control as I possibly could, so I kind of went all out and got some really, really nice headers. So if you are on a budget, $1,800 is definitely a lot of money. The last con that I can come up with for equal length headers is the loss of low end power. Obviously, that is very subjective based on the components, the tune, and everything that you're running on your car. You can really make up for that, but if you kind of just throw them on there and you really don't do too much, you'll definitely see a little bit of loss of low end RPM range. But it's great for track driving, obviously, because you're going to be in the higher RPM range most of the time. But if you're kind of just putting around town, you definitely will notice it a little bit. But again, it's one of those things. It depends on what you're running, your tune and everything, and you can kind of dial that out and you won't even really notice it overall. So those are my pros and cons of running equal length or unequal length headers. Both are fantastic options. Honestly, it's just entirely up to you. If you want to keep the sound, there is nothing wrong with that. I'm not biased either way. I love the pros of each different option. After experiencing both and having many, many miles under my belt with both setups, I kind of just prefer the equal length just because of the benefits that it provides for this motor. So it really is entirely up to you on which route you want to go. That is going to wrap up this video. I hope this was informative. I hope this helped you guys out, get a little bit more clarity as to which is good, which isn't. You know, you can really decide, up to you. I was trying to be unbiased as possible since I was able to experience both different types of setups. I just prefer equal length because of the pros that it does provide, the reliability overall, less heat and everything. And to me, it's just a better setup, feels better. Obviously, you get way more gains from it and everything. So entirely up to you. Obviously, if you really don't have a budget and you kind of just want best of the best, I highly recommend going equal length. But at the same time, there are some really, really nice setups that you can run with unequal length. And I will admit, there's been times when I've heard an STI or WX go by that are on stock or just unequal length headers in general. I'm like, man, that sounds really, really good. Maybe I should go back to it. So I hope this video helped, gave you some clarity, answered some questions, and it allowed you to make an executive decision for yourself. But that is going to wrap up this video. If you guys have any questions about the options that I named in this video or any other questions about the STI, please let me know in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to answer. But in the meantime, keep it clean, keep it simple, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.